"That ring," the lieutenant sneered, his voice a low, cut meant only for me. "You get that off at sea?" His polished uniform gleamed under the auditorium lights. My simple black dress felt like a shadow. He and his friends saw an imposter, a civilian who didn't belong. To them, my father's Naval Academy ring was just a cheap prop. But in less than 30 minutes, the 4-star Admiral on that stage would bring this entire ceremony to a dead stop, look directly at me, and make that lieutenant wish he had never been born. Before I tell you exactly what that Admiral said, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Now let's get into it. The ceremony at the Naval Academy had already started, and a cold rain was lashing against the historic windows of the main hall. The air in the auditorium was thick with the scent of rain-soaked wool and old wood, a scent of tradition and authority that made me feel like an intruder. I sat in the back row, a solitary figure in a black dress amidst a sea of immaculate dress blues and formal attire. At 30, I was an architect, a builder of quiet, orderly spaces, but here, in this world of rigid ceremony and unspoken codes, I had never felt more out of place. My father's Naval Academy ring felt heavy and foreign on my thumb, its gold band worn smooth, the insignia from the class of '87 barely visible. It was too big for any of my other fingers, a constant, loose reminder of the man I'd lost to a quiet battle with cancer just 6 months prior. "Excuse me, dear," a voice whispered beside me, sharp and edged with suspicion. I turned to see an older woman, her posture ramrod straight, her neck adorned with a perfectly knotted silk scarf and a tweed jacket that screamed old money and entitlement. "Are you quite sure you're in the right place? This is a private event, invitation only." Her eyes flicked down to my simple dress, then to the ring I was nervously twisting. I held up the embossed invitation that had arrived in my mail 3 weeks earlier, a complete mystery. "I have one," I said quietly. She examined it with the focused skepticism of a jeweler inspecting a fake diamond. "Well, I suppose they let all sorts in these days," she sniffed, turning her attention back to the stage, dismissing me completely. My cheeks burned. As the ceremony droned on, a procession of high-ranking officers lauded the 40-year career of Admiral Harrison Vance. Each speaker was a testament to a life of service I couldn't begin to comprehend, their voices resonating with a confidence I had never possessed. I felt 100 pairs of eyes on me, even if they weren't really looking. I was an anomaly, a variable in an equation that had been solved decades ago. Then I noticed them, 2 young officers a few rows ahead. One, a lieutenant with impossibly perfect blonde hair and a chest full of ribbons, leaned over and whispered to his companion. They both glanced back in my direction and shared a low, condescending chuckle. The sting of it was sharp and immediate. I knew I didn't fit in, but their open amusement felt like a personal attack. I pulled my cardigan tighter, sinking lower in my seat, wishing I could disappear into the plush red velvet. During a brief pause between speakers, the same lieutenant, called Jennings, made his way back toward my row, his friend trailing behind him like a pilot fish. He stopped at the end of the aisle, his expression a carefully constructed mask of casual curiosity. "Hey," he began, his voice just loud enough for the surrounding guests to hear. He gestured toward my hand. "That's a Naval Academy ring, right? Class of '87, unless I'm mistaken." "Yes." I managed, my throat suddenly dry. "It was my father's." "Your father," he repeated, drawing the words out. The skepticism in his tone was a physical thing. "And what was his name?" "Michael Hayes. Commander Michael Hayes." He exchanged a quick, knowing glance with his friend. A flicker of something I couldn't read crossed his face before it was replaced by a dismissive smirk. "Hayes," he mused. "Nope, doesn't ring a bell." "You sure that's real? Those rings are pure gold. Seems strange for someone to just leave it to." He trailed off, his vague gesture encompassing my entire civilian, non-military being. "It's real," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, fueled by a sudden spike of protective anger. "If you say so," he shrugged, turning back to his seat. I heard him whisper to his friend, followed by another muffled laugh. The heat in my face was unbearable now. I seriously considered leaving, grabbing my coat, and walking out into the rain. It would be rude, but it couldn't be worse than sitting here, being publicly dissected and dismissed as a fraud. But just as I was about to stand, Admiral Vance himself, the man of the hour, approached the podium for his final address. It was too late to walk out now. I was trapped. Admiral Harrison Vance was every bit the leader you'd see in a movie. At 72, his silver hair was cut with military precision, and his uniform seemed to carry not just the weight of its medals, but the gravity of 4 decades of command. As he began to speak, his voice filled the hall, a calm, commanding baritone that spoke of duty, honor, and the sacred bonds forged in the crucible of service. As he spoke, my mind drifted away from the polished stage and the condescending lieutenant back to my father. Commander Michael Hayes, as the Navy knew him, had been just dad to me, a high school physics teacher who smelled of chalk dust and coffee. He rarely spoke of his Navy years. I knew his career had been cut short by an injury during a deployment, but the details were always hazy, lost in a fog of vague explanations. He'd say it was a training accident, a simple story that closed the door on any further questions. He moved on, pouring his disciplined mind into the elegant certainties of physics, teaching teenagers about momentum and entropy. He never seemed like a man harboring a secret past. He was just dad, the one who helped me with my calculus homework and made terrible puns that made my mom roll her eyes. He wore the ring every single day, but to me, it was just a part of him, like the faint scar above his eyebrow or his habit of humming when he fixed things around the house. It wasn't a symbol of a forgotten life, it was just Dad's ring. Throughout my career, Admiral Vance was saying, his words pulling me back to the present, I have had the profound privilege of serving alongside some of the finest men and women this nation has ever produced. Their names are etched on plaques and in the halls of history. He paused, taking a sip of water. The ceremony was running long, and my earlier humiliation was now mixing with a restless desire to escape. The 2-hour drive back to my quiet apartment, and the life I understood seemed like an impossible distance away. The Admiral continued, but his tone shifted. It became less formal, more personal, charged with an emotion that made the air in the room feel suddenly still. But honor is not always a public affair. Some heroes serve in the shadows. Due to the classified nature of their work, their stories can never be told, their sacrifices never publicly acknowledged. Something in his voice made me look up, truly listen for the first time. His eyes, sharp and clear even from this distance, were scanning the audience. For a breathtaking moment, I thought his gaze rested on my section, on me. I dismissed it as paranoia. In the early years of my career, he said, leaning slightly into the microphone, I served with young officers whose courage fundamentally shaped my understanding of what it means to wear this uniform. Their bravery was quiet, their actions decisive, their names known only to a select few. He paused again, and this time the silence felt different. It was heavy with anticipation. The room was holding its collective breath. Today, before I conclude my remarks, I must address something that has weighed on my conscience for nearly 40 years. A debt of honor that is long overdue. The Admiral's eyes scanned the room once more, and this time, there was no doubt. His gaze locked directly onto mine in the back row. My heart began to hammer against my ribs. One of those officers, Admiral Vance's voice boomed, clear and resonant, cutting through the silence like a ship's bell in the night, was Lieutenant Commander Michael Hayes. The world stopped. My father's name, spoken from that podium by a 4-star admiral I had never met, echoed in the cavernous hall. It didn't make sense. It was as if someone had projected a page from my private life onto the public screen of this grand, intimidating ceremony. A wave of murmurs rippled through the audience, and then silence. A profound, absolute silence. I felt hundreds of pairs of eyes turning toward me, a slow, collective swivel of uniform heads. I could feel Lieutenant Jennings' stare from his row, a tangible pressure on the back of my neck. I was pinned in place by the weight of their attention. Lieutenant Commander Hayes, Admiral Vance continued, his voice unwavering, participated in Operation Sundown Fury, a classified mission that, until last month, did not officially exist. The name itself sounded like something from a thriller, a world away from the quiet life of a physics teacher. His actions during that operation saved the lives of 17 servicemen, including my own. The air left my lungs. The room, which had been silent, now seemed devoid of oxygen. I saw a ceremony coordinator, a commander with a concerned look on her face, begin to make her way down the aisle toward my row. Because of the mission's top-secret classification, the Admiral explained, his eyes still fixed on me. Commander Hayes never received the recognition he was due. The severe injuries he sustained during that mission ended a career that was destined for greatness. But his sacrifice ensured the success of an operation that has remained a state secret for nearly 4 decades. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. I spent those decades wondering what became of Michael Hayes. A month ago, I learned that he had passed away. I also learned that his daughter was living a quiet life, completely unaware of her father's extraordinary heroism. The coordinator reached my row, gesturing for me to stand. My legs felt like they were made of water. I rose slowly, shakily, my hands clutching my purse. The entire world was a blur of blue uniforms and shocked faces. The woman in the tweed jacket was staring at me, her mouth slightly agape. And Lieutenant Jennings, his face was a mask of undisguised shock, his earlier arrogance completely gone, replaced by a pale, dawning horror. Admiral Vance stepped down from the podium and began walking toward me. The distance he crossed felt like miles. As he drew closer, I could see the composed, military facade give way to something deeply personal, something emotional. He stopped directly in front of me. "Miss Hayes," he said, his voice softer now, but still carrying through the silent hall. "I have wanted to meet you for 40 years. His eyes fell to my hand, where my father's ring caught the light. "May I?" he asked. Numbly, I extended my hand. I didn't understand what was happening. He took it gently, respectfully, and lifted it so the entire auditorium could see the worn, golden band. Then, to my utter astonishment, he bent his head and pressed his lips to the ring in a gesture of profound reverence. "Sundown Fury," he whispered, just loud enough for those nearby to hear. The effect was instantaneous. Every single military officer in the room, from the youngest ensign to the oldest general, snapped to perfect, rigid attention. It was a thunderclap of movement in the silence. "Your father," Admiral Vance said, his voice ringing with emotion, "pulled me from the burning wreckage of a helicopter during Sundown Fury. Then he went back in. He went back for 3 more men, suffering severe burns that would alter the course of his life. Because the mission was classified, he never spoke of it. He carried that secret and that pain for 40 years. Tears were streaming down my face now, hot and unstoppable. All those years, he was just my dad, the man who fixed my bike and explained the stars. I had never, ever known. The United States Navy owes your father a debt that can never be fully repaid," Admiral Vance declared, his voice resonating with 40 years of unspoken gratitude. He was recommended for the Navy Cross, our service's second highest award for valor. The classification of Sundown Fury prevented it from being awarded. An aide materialized at his side, holding a deep blue velvet box. The Admiral opened it, revealing the stunning medal, its distinctive blue and white ribbon crisp and new. "Today, with the mission finally declassified, I want to present you with the medal your father earned." He held it out, awarded posthumously to Commander Michael Hayes for extraordinary heroism in combat. His actions were in keeping with the highest traditions of the United States Naval Service. I accepted the box with trembling hands. The weight of it felt impossible, a physical manifestation of a life I had never known. How had he carried this? "I need everyone here to understand something," Admiral Vance announced, turning to address the full auditorium. The shift in his tone was immediate, from revered leader to stern commander. "Miss Hayes came here today, wearing her father's ring, and I witnessed individuals in this very room question its authenticity. Let me be unequivocally clear. Michael Hayes earned the right to wear that ring through 4 years of grueling education at this academy and through selfless, distinguished service to his country. His daughter honors his memory by wearing it today. The silence that followed was deafening, thick with shame. I could see Lieutenant Jennings standing at rigid attention, his face flushed a deep, mottled red. Admiral Vance turned back to me, his expression softening again. Your father saved my life, Clara, and the lives of 16 other men. Every rank I achieved, every command I held, every day I've had with my family for the last 40 years. I owe it all to his courage on that day. He paused. Did he ever tell you anything? He told me he helped people. I managed to say, my voice thick with tears. He just never told me the details. That was Michael Hayes, the Admiral said with a sad smile. Always the mission before himself. He studied my face. You have his eyes and his quiet dignity. Suddenly, his command voice filled the hall again, sharp and absolute. No one moves until she speaks. Miss Hayes has something to say. Hundreds of faces turned to me, expectant. I thought of my father, the physics teacher. My father never told me he was a hero. I began, my voice finding a surprising strength. He just taught me to help people when I could, and to remember that everyone has a story you don't know. He would be honored by this, but he'd also want you to know that he was just doing his job. I paused, my gaze finding Lieutenant Jennings. He taught me that respect isn't something you demand. It's something you earn, and that sometimes the most important things we do are the ones no one ever sees. As the ceremony concluded, a line formed to speak with me. The lieutenant waited until the crowd thinned. Ma'am, he said, his voice formal and low. I owe you a profound apology. My conduct was inexcusable. I saw genuine remorse in his eyes. My father always said that recognizing a mistake is the first step to growing from it. I replied. Then, a man in civilian clothes approached. Miss Hayes, I'm Marcus Thorne. He was handsome, radiating a quiet confidence. Your father saved my life. I was a young lieutenant back then. Admiral Vance appeared at my side. Mr. Thorne is now the CEO of a major tech firm. He has a family, children, all because of your father. Another man came forward, older, with a slight limp. Samuel Gallo, petty officer back then. Your father carried me to safety. One by one, for more men appeared, survivors of sundown fury, each carrying 4 decades of gratitude they had never been able to express. They had all come from all corners of the country just for this day. Marcus Thorne pulled out a worn photograph. This was taken 3 days before the mission. In the center was my father, impossibly young, his smile carefree. He talked about you constantly, Thorne said. His little girl, Clara, he carried a tiny picture of you in his wallet through the entire deployment. The true measure of a legacy isn't always found in polished medals or public records. Sometimes it exists in the quiet, unseen spaces, in the lives that were saved, the families that were built, and the futures that were made possible because one person chose courage when no one was watching. That simple gold ring wasn't just a piece of jewelry. It was a symbol of a promise kept in silence, a testament to a heroism defined not by recognition, but by action. Have you ever completely misjudged someone based on how they looked? What would you have done if you were Clara, sitting in that auditorium, feeling so small and out of place? Do you think the quietest people sometimes carry the heaviest burdens of heroism, and that we walk past people like Commander Hayes every single day without ever knowing the battles they have won for us? If this story about hidden courage and earned respect moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about unsung heroes. Share this with someone who knows that a person's value isn't defined by their uniform or status. We read and appreciate every single comment, and your stories matter to us. More stories about shocking military secrets and moments of incredible bravery are waiting on your screen. Watch those next, and we'll see you in the next one with another story you won't forget.